Treaty of Friendship. The Soviets actually suggested to the Vietnamese as early as 1975 that we should sign a Treaty of Friendship. Vietnamese turned that down. But then in 1978, the Vietnamese approached the Soviets saying, we would like to sign the treaty, because Vietnamese knew that that treaty would buy them an insurance against likely or possible Chinese reaction to what they're going to do in Cambodia. So in November 78, the Vietnamese signed a treaty with the Soviet Union.
In December 1978, the Khmer Rouge launched a fairly small attack into Vietnam, northwest of Ho Chi Minh City in Tay Ninh province, and it was at this point that the Vietnamese hit. They decided that enough was enough. They were going to go for broke. They had neither the political nor the underlying current of a revolution in Kampuchea, and they decided to go for broke. They did this with a tactic known as the Blooming Lotus, which merely is a textbook drive straight down highways. They picked 3 main highways into Kampuchea, where all highways lead to Phnom Penh, and they simply drove down the highways, splitting up the Pol Pot forces as they went. The idea was simply to reach Phnom Penh and into western Kampuchea as quickly as possible, establish as much control of the roads and the strategic areas as possible, as quickly as possible. And this is what they did with the so-called Blooming Lotus. The Pol Pot forces were put into massive disarray. So the original tactic did work. It did establish the command, and it did get the Vietnamese into Phnom Penh, where they could quickly claim victory. It took some 2 weeks to reach Phnom Penh.
When the capital fell on the 7th of January 1979, the Vietnamese had won control of Kampuchea. After 3.5 years of terror, the Pol Pot regime had collapsed. To cap their stunning victory, the Vietnamese had even planned to kidnap Sihanouk from house arrest. But just a day before Phnom Penh was captured, the prince was released by the Khmer Rouge and flown out to China. Pol Pot himself and the leading Khmer Rouge then fled to the jungle, only hours in advance of the Vietnamese juggernaut.
It all appears very confused when communists start fighting communists, but I think it's fairly simple here, really. The border fighting merely provided an excuse for something that was bound to occur sooner or later. If there had not been border fighting, it might have had to have been achieved through a coup d'etat in Phnom Penh or an infiltration of Pol Pot's Communist Party. But Vietnamese control of Indochina is a basic tenet.
This used to be a prosperous business quarter. It's now an empty shell. The people of the city went away with only their bare hands. Had liberation been late in coming, had it been postponed by only 5 or 7 months, how many would be left of the population of Kampuchea? North of Phnom Penh, about 10 kilometers from the Po Chen Tong airfield, was a weapons yard of about 4 hectares in area. It contains thousands of tons of artillery ammunition. Weapons were sent in by Peking in such quantities that the Pol Pot Yang Seri regime ran short of storehouses. Peking was indeed full of solicitude for their protégé, the Pol Pot Yang Seri clique. Visit to a secondary school. Over the past 3 years, this school was turned into a jail for political prisoners. Let us visit a cell block. This is a special block. We say it is special because in each former classroom, only 1 prisoner was kept. His hands and feet were chained to an iron bed. When we came to this prison on the 14th of January 1979, there were 11 dead bodies in the 11 former classrooms and 1 body lying in the yard. In this compound, we found a large number of prisoners' files and photographs. After killing a prisoner, the torturers would cut his throat and rip up his belly, then put a number on his body, and once again take a photograph of him, dead. What did they do it for?
Pol Pot is mad, you know, like Hitler. And Pol Pot, they had to suppress all opposition, to wipe out all opposition, including many communists in his own party, in order to remain the master of Cambodia.
Among the photographs of the dead prisoners are portraits and statues of Pol Pot. No comment is needed.
Westerners asked me, yes, even if we believe that Pol Pot is mad, how can he have so many Khmer Rouge to support him, to serve him? And when Hitler was in power in Germany, could you say that the German people was bad, or the German elite was bad? But it happened that everybody, you know, at least followed him, and he had at his disposal many madmen, very bad, like Himmler, etc. So Pol Pot has Himmler, his Himmler, etc. The same phenomenon.
We found these children in the office building. All were paralyzed with hunger and fear. Who are their parents? And where are they now? Just imagine the horrible days these children spent in this blood-stained compound.
That men like Pol Pot and Hitler can have supporters. That is a phenomenon, but in conformity with the misery of our mankind, you know, our earth, lack God's luck. Our earth lacks God's luck. The Khmer Rouge, they are criminal, certainly, since they have killed so many innocent people in Cambodia, but it is not enough as a reason to give the Vietnamese the permission to colonize and Vietnamize my country.
A month and 10 days after the Vietnamese took Phnom Penh, the Chinese invaded northern Vietnam. There were obviously two reasons why they did this. One was to try to pull regular units of the Vietnamese army up onto the border and then out of Kampuchea, of course, to give Pol Pot, who was fighting for his life, a chance to regroup and perhaps counterattack the Vietnamese. The second reason was to boost the morale of countries in this area, particularly Thailand, who felt somewhat threatened by the sudden fall of Kampuchea to the invading Vietnamese army a month earlier.
The Chinese had vowed to teach their southern neighbor a lesson. In a series of furious battles, they did punish the Vietnamese, but their own casualties were extremely high. The Vietnamese rode out the storm without needing help from their Soviet allies. They emerged with their military pride intact, and above all, their control of Kampuchea was not changed in the least. Now the Vietnamese boasted, the situation in Kampuchea is irreversible. To formalize their takeover, the Vietnamese had installed a government of their own choosing. The figurehead was a former Khmer Rouge, but not only served Pol Pot, they'd fought the Vietnamese and led barbaric raids across the border before they'd defected. Behind the scenes, of course, the Vietnamese would hold the reins of power. There were all too few Kampucheans they could train and trust as collaborators.
the Vietnamese invasion came with such rapidity and was so surprising that a lot of people didn't really know at all what was happening. It was obvious to people that something was happening which was causing the Khmer Rouge regime to fall apart, but from their point of